In the vast stretches of space, where stars gleamed like distant fires and planets spun silently in the void, humanity had already made a name for itself, but not in the way most other civilizations had. Across countless star systems, humans were known as the Death. This title was not given lightly. It was earned through centuries of surviving environments that no other species could endure, thriving on planets where life itself seemed impossible. Harsh radiation, toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures, and deadly wildlife were common features of these worlds, yet humans adapted, endured, and conquered. This adaptability, this sheer will to survive, had become their defining characteristic. Other civilizations spoke of humans with a mixture of awe and fear, knowing that when humans arrived, they could take on conditions that would destroy entire fleets or annihilate a species that considered itself advanced. Humans were survivors in the truest sense, and this reputation traveled faster than their ships. The Deathworlders were not just survivors, they were specialists, a fleet of individuals trained from birth to face death and still find a way to live. Their bodies were toughened, their minds sharpened, and their instincts honed to sense danger before it became fatal. They were not diplomats, nor were they explorers in the traditional sense. They were, in the eyes of the galaxy, a force of nature. When humans landed on a planet, it was understood that they could endure anything, and they often did so with astonishing efficiency. They had developed technology to help them adapt, but at the core, it was their resilience, courage, and sometimes brutal pragmatism that made them unmatched. Far from human space, in a quieter corner of the galaxy, a small alien civilization was struggling for survival. Their world, once a thriving planet full of technology, culture, and life, had fallen into chaos. A massive natural disaster had struck. A combination of geological upheavals, atmospheric collapse, and unpredictable weather patterns that rendered their cities uninhabitable. The once green landscapes became harsh deserts, toxic swamps, or jagged mountains that could tear apart any traveler unprepared for the conditions. Even the wildlife, once docile or manageable, turned dangerous and unpredictable. The aliens themselves were physically weak, much smaller and fragile compared to humans. They were a species built for stability, not survival. Every passing day brought new threats. Structures collapsed under storms, food became scarce, and their technology, while advanced, struggled to function in the hostile environment. Faced with extinction, the aliens did something unusual. They sent out a call for help, a signal into the void. It was a rare act for their species, which had previously preferred isolation and self. This SOS was a desperate plea, encoded with hope, fear, and the knowledge that if no one answered, their civilization might vanish entirely. They broadcasted it widely, but only a few species were capable of even recognizing it. Most ignored the signal, dismissing it as interference, a random transmission, or a natural phenomenon. Space was full of noise, and many advanced civilizations had long grown indifferent to distant calls from lesser-known worlds. However, the SOS did not go unnoticed by humans. It reached the Defense Command of Earth, where the Deathworlders were stationed and monitored. Humans had systems in place for extreme contingencies, especially involving unknown species in danger. When the signal appeared on their scanners, it was immediately flagged as unusual. It came from a system deep within a nebula, a region notorious for violent electromagnetic storms and unpredictable gravitational anomalies. Many species would have ignored it, but humans approached the situation differently. For them, an SOS was not merely a request, it was a challenge, a call to action. It was the kind of situation that suited the Deathworlders perfectly. The fleet mobilized quickly, each member trained for missions where every step could be fatal. Their ships were built to endure extremes, reinforced hulls, adaptive shields, and engines capable of adjusting to sudden environmental shifts. Crew members were seasoned in both combat and survival, trained to operate under conditions where others would panic. These humans were not just brave, they were methodical, efficient, and capable of making life or death decisions in moments. Their reputation as Deathworlders meant that they could survive where others would perish. It was not arrogance, it was experience, honed over generations on the galaxy's most dangerous planets. As preparations continued, the intelligence officers attempted to decode the SOS. The alien language was unlike anything humans had encountered. There were fragments they could interpret, pleas for help, coordinates, mentions of environmental collapse, but much remained mysterious. Even without full understanding, the sense of urgency was clear. The aliens were desperate, and the conditions on their planet were dire. Humans could sense the severity of the situation even through partial translations. This reinforced the decision. The fleet would respond, regardless of the unknown dangers. The journey ahead was perilous. The nebula surrounding the alien system was notorious for tearing ships apart. Magnetic storms could fry electronics, gravity pockets could crush hulls, and the sheer density of interstellar debris made navigation a deadly game. But the Deathworlders were built for this. Their training emphasized not just survival, but adaptation. Every crew member knew that they might face conditions worse than any they had encountered. Yet their confidence in themselves and each other remained unshakable. The ethos of the Deathworlders was clear: survive, adapt, and protect. They had faced impossible odds before and had emerged victorious. This mission would be no different. Meanwhile, in the alien system, hope began to take shape, faint but real. The SOS had been broadcast with no expectation that it would reach humans specifically. Many species had ignored the call, and the aliens had grown accustomed to failure. Yet, somewhere across the void, a fleet of humans, the legendary Deathworlders, was preparing to enter the system. The aliens could not understand fully what was coming, but they would soon witness a species capable of thriving in conditions far harsher than their own planet could produce. Humans were not like other species. They were unpredictable, adaptive, and relentless when survival was on the line. The background of this mission was not only about the aliens' plight, it was also a reflection of human society and history. Humanity had evolved on Earth under conditions that, while not deadly in the same way, required adaptation and ingenuity. Over centuries, humans had faced wars, natural disasters, and the limits of survival. That history had created a species capable of extreme resilience, and now, equipped with spacefaring technology, they extended that capability across the stars. The Deathworlders were the pinnacle of that evolutionary and societal development. They represented a species that could endure, outthink, and outfight nearly any challenge presented by the universe. In addition, the fleet's commanders understood the stakes. This was not a routine mission or a scientific exploration. They were entering an unknown world with unknown dangers, where environmental hazards, alien wildlife, and perhaps even unforeseen threats awaited. Yet, despite the risks, the ethos of the Deathworlders emphasized action over hesitation. Inaction, in the face of suffering or danger, was not an option. Their training, culture, and history had instilled in them a principle. Survival was not just about protecting oneself but ensuring the survival of others when possible. The SOS presented exactly that opportunity. Every member of the fleet prepared mentally for the journey. Simulations were run to anticipate the nebulous storms, to predict potential hostile encounters, and to strategize for rescue operations. The fleet's ships were checked and double-checked. Every piece of equipment was assessed for durability, redundancy, and reliability. The human crew understood that failure could mean annihilation, yet they had faced worse conditions on Earth's death worlds, on planets that would kill an ordinary species within hours, and had emerged stronger, smarter, and more capable. Their confidence was not reckless. It was earned through experience. As the fleet set course, a quiet resolve spread among the humans. They did not speak of heroism or glory. Their focus was on survival, adaptability, and completing the mission. Each crew member carried the weight of centuries of human experience, the collective knowledge of survival, and the unshakable will that had earned humans the title of death. They were about to enter an alien world on the brink of collapse, a place where death was constant, where every step could be fatal, and where the very environment worked against life. And yet, this was precisely the kind of challenge that humans had trained for their entire lives. For the aliens, unaware of the human resolve, the arrival of the SOS responders would soon change everything. They had sent a message into the void, a desperate plea for help with little hope of response. And yet, through the vast emptiness of space, a fleet of humans had answered, guided by courage, skill, and the unyielding will to survive. These were not heroes in the conventional sense. They were Deathworlders, built for extreme conditions and unmatched in their ability to endure the impossible. The stage was set for an encounter that would test the limits of both species, an introduction that would shape the future of the alien world and reveal the astonishing capabilities of humanity in the galaxy's most hostile corners. It is about humans as a species defined by their ability to survive and adapt, about the alien civilization's desperate plea, and about the collision of these two realities through an SOS. It establishes the stakes, the dangers, and the character of the humans who will enter a world designed to kill them. By the end of this phase, the reader understands the power, ingenuity, and unbreakable spirit of the human Deathworld, setting the stage for the rising challenges and critical moments to follow. As the human Deathworlders fleet prepared for the journey toward the alien the challenges began to multiply even before they left their own space. The moment the fleet picked up the coordinates in the fragmented alien messages, it became clear that this was no ordinary mission. This would be a test not just of technology or skill, but of endurance, ingenuity, and the ability to adapt under conditions that could easily destroy even the most prepared crew. Every member of the fleet understood that the universe did not care about hope, morality, or goodwill. It was indifferent, brutal, and often lethal. To survive, the Deathworlders needed to anticipate dangers that had no precedent. The initial challenge was understanding the alien civilization itself. Their SOS was not straightforward. The language was partially translatable, but much of the message consisted of strange symbols and fragments that human linguists and AI interpreters could only speculate about. They could tell that the aliens were physically weak, that their world was collapsing environmentally, and that their technology, while advanced in some areas, was failing rapidly. They could also detect a sense of urgency and desperation embedded in the messages, a plea that resonated far deeper than words alone could convey. For the Deathworlders, decoding these messages was a puzzle that required patience, intelligence, and intuition. They could not rely on standard protocols. Improvisation would be essential. Meanwhile, the planet's location presented its own set of challenges. The SOS had originated from deep within a nebula notorious in galactic charts for its instability. Magnetic storms ripped through the region like invisible hurricanes, distorting sensors, disrupting communications, and threatening to destroy ships entirely. Gravity pockets, unpredictable and violent, threatened to crush or trap any spacecraft that ventured too close. Debris floated in dense clouds, remnants of failed civilizations and natural phenomena, creating hazards that could puncture hulls and disable engines in seconds. Navigating through this nebula would require split-second decisions, trust in instinct, and coordination at a level few human crews had ever needed to achieve before. As the fleet charted its course, the crew realized the immense risks of traveling through this chaotic environment. Every ship, from the smallest scout vessels to the massive command ships, had to operate in perfect synchrony. Sensors were constantly being recalibrated, shields reinforced, and engines adjusted to respond to unpredictable gravitational and electromagnetic fluctuations. Even small mistakes could be fatal. A slight miscalculation could send a ship crashing into a magnetic storm or an asteroid cluster, which could tear through reinforced hulls as easily as paper. The human Deathworlders were aware that this journey itself could be a filter, one that might eliminate a portion of the fleet before they even reached the alien world. In addition to environmental hazards, there were the moral and psychological challenges of the mission. Many crew members questioned what they would find upon arrival. Was the SOS genuine, or was it a trap designed to lure humans into danger? Could the aliens even be helped? The messages hinted at environmental collapse, but without first-hand observation, it was impossible to know the full extent of the crisis. Some of the more cautious officers argued for delay or additional reconnaissance, but the ethos of the Deathworlders left little room for hesitation. Action, not deliberation, defined them. Their survivalist training emphasized responding decisively in the face of uncertainty, and waiting too long could cost lives both human and alien. The preparation for the mission went beyond strategy and technology. Each human crew member underwent intense mental and physical conditioning in the days before departure. The Deathworlders had always trained to anticipate extreme threats, but the nebula and the alien world represented a new level of unpredictability. Crew members practiced emergency drills under simulated conditions meant to mimic electromagnetic storms, gravitational anomalies, and hostile environments. They rehearsed navigating through collapsed structures, extracting fragile life forms, and defending themselves against unknown predators. Psychological training was equally important. Every individual was prepared for the possibility of failure, injury, or death, but the emphasis was on focus, composure, and adaptive problem-solving. As the fleet finally entered the nebula, the rising challenge became immediate and tangible. Magnetic storms erupted without warning, sending arcs of lightning-like energy across the void. Ships' shields strained under the constant barrage, and alarms blared as sensors were disrupted or destroyed. Even the most experienced pilots were tested to their limits, relying on intuition and visual cues when instruments failed. The dense clouds of debris and space dust reduced visibility, making it nearly impossible to maintain formation. Communications flickered and cut out intermittently, forcing crew members to rely on hand signals, prearranged visual cues, and split-second decisions. Every second became a test of coordination, patience, and courage. Beyond the physical dangers, there were the emotional challenges of the rising mission. The aliens' SOS implied not only environmental collapse but also social chaos. Cities were crumbling, populations scattered, and the very concept of stability had been lost. The Deathworlders, despite their reputation for toughness, could not ignore the sheer despair encoded in the alien message. Empathy was a tool as much as a hazard. Understanding the stakes, knowing that entire civilizations could vanish without intervention, added weight to every decision. Crew members had to balance survival instincts with the imperative to protect a species far weaker and more fragile than themselves. One of the most pressing rising challenges was the unknown, the nature of the alien wildlife and planetary threats. Reports, though fragmented, suggested that native creatures had adapted to the collapsing ecosystem in terrifying ways. Once docile animals had become aggressive, predatory, and extremely resilient to environmental hazards. Some appeared to feed on the energy or radiation from natural storms, making them virtually untouchable during peak environmental chaos. The Deathworlders had trained for hostile wildlife on Deathworlds, but the prospect of encountering creatures that could not only kill but also disrupt technology added a new level of complexity. They had to plan for combat, rescue, and environmental hazards simultaneously, a multitasking challenge that required both strategic thinking and raw instinct. As the fleet progressed, the Deathworlders discovered that some aspects of the SOS were more complicated than initially believed. Certain coordinates pointed toward areas completely covered by toxic clouds, areas where no human had ever survived. The fleet had to determine whether these were zones critical to rescue operations or traps, and every decision carried immense risk. The rising challenge was no longer hypothetical. It was immediate and relentless. Crews worked in shifts around the clock, repairing damage, adjusting routes, and scanning for life signs. The sense of urgency permeated the fleet. Every delay could cost lives, both human and alien, and no one could afford hesitation. Simultaneously, tension built within the fleet's command structure. There were debates over strategy, over the extent to which they should risk human lives, and over how to prioritize resources in an environment that could destroy them at any moment. Yet, despite these debates, there was an underlying cohesion among the humans. Their training, their shared history as Deathworlders, and their experience with high-stakes survival forged a unity that overcame fear and doubt. They were not perfect, but they were extraordinary. And extraordinary was what this mission demanded. The rising challenge was also a test of human ingenuity. Ships' shields were adapted to absorb the unpredictable energy surges of the nebula. Engines were recalibrated for constant micro-adjustments to navigate gravitational turbulence. Crew members improvised new tools and techniques on the fly, creating solutions to problems that no protocol could have anticipated. Every hour brought a new obstacle. Debris fields that required manual maneuvering, power surges that threatened to disable life support, and sudden storms that forced the fleet into emergency formations. Survival depended not just on training, but on creativity, courage, and teamwork. As the fleet neared the alien world, the challenges escalated further. The SOS indicated that entire regions were uninhabitable and unstable. The aliens themselves were scattered, hiding from environmental hazards and desperate predators. The Deathworlders had to prepare for extraction operations in areas that could collapse without warning. Landing zones were risky, and the potential for injury or death was extreme. Yet, despite the looming dangers, the humans moved forward. They were conditioned to thrive in chaos, to adapt when all signs pointed to failure. The rising challenge had transformed from a theoretical scenario into a series of immediate, life-threatening problems. The fleet had navigated the nebula's storms, avoided deadly debris fields, and adapted to environmental hazards while decoding fragments of the alien SOS. Every crew member had faced physical, psychological, and moral tests, proving their capacity to endure, adapt, and solve problems under conditions that would have destroyed ordinary species. The rising challenge phase was crucial. It built tension, established the stakes, and tested every aspect of the Deathworlders' training, experience, and resilience. It was not only a journey through dangerous space, but also an exploration of human determination and ingenuity. The SOS had set the stage, but the universe had delivered a trial that was far harsher than anyone could have anticipated. And the humans, as Deathworlders, had risen to meet it, proving once again that where survival seemed impossible, they could prevail. The moment the human Deathworlders fleet emerged from the nebulous chaos, the mission escalated to a level none had fully anticipated. The alien world sprawled before them like a fractured jewel, its surface marred by disasters that had stripped it of the life and civilization it once held. From orbit, the planet looked almost unrecognizable, a mixture of jagged mountains, toxic swamps, and sprawling urban ruins where faint lights flickered, signaling the faintest glimmers of life. Yet, even from this distance, the fleet could sense the dangers below. Sensors detected violent storms raging across the surface, localized magnetic fields disrupting electronics, and massive energy fluctuations remnants of the planet's failing natural systems. The SOS had warned of collapse, but seeing it firsthand revealed the full magnitude of the crisis. The fleet began descending cautiously, each ship maneuvering through turbulent layers of atmosphere thick with ash and radioactive particles. The air was filled with strange Hasidic clouds that corroded unshielded metal, and violent gusts battered the ships relentlessly. Even the most advanced engines struggled to maintain stability, forcing the pilots to rely on instinct and reflex honed from years of surviving Deathworld worlds. Every ship's hull creaked under the stress, and every sensor alarm screamed the reality. This was a world hostile to life, hostile even to the humans who thrived in the galaxy's deadliest environments. The first landing teams encountered immediate resistance, though not from the aliens themselves. Nature, or what remained of it, had become lethal. Massive mutated predators roamed the outskirts of the ruined cities. Some were the size of small buildings, others moved with incredible speed and intelligence. Many had developed natural armor or evolved ways to absorb energy from the planet's storms, making conventional weapons less effective. The Deathworlders quickly realized that every step outside their ships could be a fight for survival. Their training had prepared them for hostile creatures, but the combination of environmental hazards and unpredictable wildlife elevated the threat to unprecedented levels. The critical moment arrived when the fleet's sensors detected an unusually massive disturbance near one of the main alien population centers. The distress signal had been strongest there, and human analysis suggested that this was a major urban settlement where thousands of aliens could still be trapped. Scanning revealed that buildings had partially collapsed, toxic clouds hung thick in the streets, and massive fissures ran through the ground, occasionally emitting bursts of searing gas or fire. The area was surrounded by the most dangerous predators yet, creatures that seemed to coordinate attacks as if guided by instinctual intelligence. The situation was complex. Any rescue operation would require careful coordination, rapid adaptability, and absolute control over chaos. Landing pods touched the surface. The humans were immediately engaged in multiple simultaneous crises. A sudden tremor caused a portion of the ruined city to collapse near a group of trapped aliens. Simultaneously, a massive creature emerged from the shadows, drawn by movement and energy emissions from the human fleet. The creature's hide was thick, almost impenetrable, and it moved with surprising speed, crushing smaller vehicles and hurling debris like weapons. The human teams had to act instantly. Standard combat protocols were insufficient. Improvisation, intuition, and split-second tactical decisions were necessary to protect both the aliens and themselves. Inside the chaos, individual acts of bravery and ingenuity became vital. One Deathworlder squad leader noticed a structural weakness in a collapsing building. Using makeshift supports and coordinated lifts, they created a temporary passage for trapped aliens, maneuvering them through rubble while dodging falling debris and avoiding predatory creatures. Another team modified energy shields to create a temporary barrier against the massive predator, buying critical seconds for the rescue operation to continue. The alien survivors, fragile and panicked, looked on in disbelief as these humans moved with coordinated precision, facing dangers that would have killed almost any other species instantly. The psychological stakes were immense. The human crew had trained for high-stress situations, but this was different. They were not fighting in simulations or controlled environments. The threat was real, immediate, and unpredictable. Every decision could result in the death of crew members, civilians, or both. There was no room for error, no second chances. Yet the Deathworlders thrived under pressure. Their training emphasized mental resilience as much as physical strength. They compartmentalized fear, focused on immediate goals, and relied on experience to make life-saving decisions in seconds. In this moment, their mental toughness was as crucial as any weapon or shield. Communication became another rising challenge. The alien survivors were terrified, unable to understand the humans' language, and hesitant to trust these massive armored beings. Some hid, some panicked, and some instinctively ran toward danger, coordinating the rescue while simultaneously defending against environmental hazards and predators required constant improvisation. The humans used gestures, lights, and visual cues to guide the aliens to safer zones. Portable shields and emergency transport devices were deployed to move groups efficiently while minimizing exposure to threats. Every operation was a delicate balance between speed and safety, requiring focus, courage, and adaptability under extreme conditions. The escalation was compounded by the unpredictable environment itself. The planet's failing systems continued to shift violently. Gas eruptions, tremors, and acidic rains occurred without warning, threatening to undo all the progress the humans had made in minutes. Strategic planning had to be abandoned at times in favor of reactive problem-solving. One section of the city that had been cleared of predators suddenly became a death trap when a fissure opened beneath it, forcing the rescue teams to rapidly redirect both humans and aliens to safer ground. Another sudden storm caused electrical surges that disabled part of the fleet's support systems, forcing humans on the ground to improvise with damaged or makeshift equipment. The escalation of danger was relentless, pushing every individual to their limits. As the crisis reached its peak, the fleet commander made a crucial decision. Observing the chaos, he recognized that the safest path for the aliens required diverting the fleet through an uncharted canyon that no previous mission had attempted. The canyon's structure promised temporary cover from storms and predators, but it was narrow, treacherous, and untested. Attempting this maneuver was extremely risky, but it offered the only viable chance of extracting the largest group of alien survivors. The decision represented a turning point. Either the fleet succeeded in navigating the canyon and saving the aliens, or the consequences could be catastrophic. With multiple casualties and potential loss of fleet assets, the humans executed the maneuver with precision that reflected their Deathworlder training. Pilots adjusted for every sudden turbulence. Coordination teams guided each ship through tight passages, and ground teams prepared landing zones under extreme pressure. The canyon, initially appearing as an obstacle, became a lifeline, a temporary sanctuary from predators and environmental hazards. Every step of this operation required continuous adaptation. Plans changed by the second in response to new threats or unforeseen obstacles. The humans' ability to improvise in real time, drawing on past experience and instinct, proved decisive. Amid this chaos, the aliens' perception of humans transformed. They had once viewed humans as strange, formidable beings, but now they witnessed a species capable of thriving where survival was nearly impossible. Humans moved through collapsing cities, defended themselves and others against monstrous predators, and adapted instantly to unpredictable environmental dangers. The aliens realized that these humans were unlike any they had encountered before. Where they saw despair and hopelessness, humans saw opportunity, solutions, and paths to survival. This understanding would later form the foundation of trust between the species. Even as the critical moment unfolded, the humans faced internal challenges. Exhaustion, injury, and equipment damage tested the limits of every crew member. Some sustained burns from environmental hazards, others were bruised or cut from debris, and a few experienced temporary sensory overload from the storms and predators. Yet, they persevered, driven not only by the mission but by the core principle of the Deathworlders' survival through adaptability and protection of the vulnerable. They understood that failure was not an option, and every individual contributed to maintaining the cohesion and efficiency of the rescue operations. The peak of the escalation also revealed the ingenuity of human problem-solving. Standard rescue techniques were insufficient, forcing the deployment of experimental tools and improvised solutions. Energy nets were created to capture panicked aliens safely. Temporary barriers were erected to funnel predators away from human pathways, and sensor arrays were repurposed to detect environmental hazards faster. The humans' ability to think quickly, innovate under pressure, and adapt technology to unpredictable circumstances turned the tide of the critical moment. What could have been a disaster transformed into a managed, although still perilous, operation. The critical moment had passed, but not without cost or tension. The humans had successfully extracted the largest groups of alien survivors while navigating collapsing structures, lethal predators, and volatile environmental hazards. Their ability to remain calm under pressure, act decisively, and adapt instantly had been tested to the extreme. Every individual, from the youngest crew member to the fleet commander, had demonstrated the combination of courage, skill, and resilience that defined Death. The aliens, once desperate and fearful, began to recognize the humans as protectors, capable of achieving what no other species could. This escalation phase was pivotal. It demonstrated the dangers of the alien world, the unpredictability of the environment, and the extreme conditions under which humans had to operate. It highlighted both the physical and psychological challenges of the mission, the complexity of the rescue operation, and the ingenuity required to overcome unprecedented threats. Most importantly, it established a turning point. Humans were no longer merely responding to a call for help. They were actively shaping the outcome of an entire civilization's survival. Their actions in this critical moment defined the trajectory of the mission, set the stage for resolution, and solidified their reputation as the galaxy's most capable survivalists. After the chaos and terror of the critical moment, the human Deathworlders fleet entered the phase that would determine whether their mission would succeed or fail entirely. The alien world was still hostile, its environment unstable, its predators relentless, but the humans had achieved what no other species could. They had reached the scattered survivors and positioned themselves to stabilize the situation. This was the resolution phase, where strategy, skill, and courage converged to turn a near-impossible mission into a tangible success. The first step was organizing the aliens for evacuation and protection. After witnessing the humans' extraordinary capabilities during the critical moment, the alien survivors began to trust them. Fear still lingered. Some had lost family, friends, and their homes, but the humans had proven that they could act decisively to save lives. Using a combination of universal translation devices, visual cues, and calm gestures, the Deathworlders began guiding the aliens to safer zones. They established temporary shelters using portable structures that could resist environmental hazards, providing a semblance of safety in a world where even standing still could be deadly. Meanwhile, on the technological front, the fleet worked tirelessly to stabilize key areas. Environmental hazards like fissures, gas eruptions, and toxic clouds were mitigated using advanced human technology, often adapted on the fly. Energy barriers were deployed to redirect the flow of dangerous gases. Mobile stabilizers were set up to reinforce weak terrain, and drones were sent to monitor predator movement. The humans' ability to innovate in real time turned otherwise catastrophic risks into manageable challenges. Their technology alone would not have sufficed. It was the combination of human ingenuity, adaptability, and experience that ensured the plan worked. One of the most critical aspects of the resolution was rescuing trapped alien populations. Many survivors had been isolated in buildings that were partially destroyed, in toxic zones, or in areas patrolled by dangerous creatures. Human teams coordinated precise extractions, moving carefully to avoid triggering structural collapses or attracting predators. That human survival skills were on full display. They navigated collapsing buildings, neutralized or distracted wildlife, and carried alien survivors through dangerous terrain to temporary safety. Each successful rescue reinforced confidence among the aliens, who began to realize that these humans were not just rescuers, they were saviors in a world that seemed designed to kill them. The process was not easy, nor was it without loss. Some crew members were injured by falling debris or sudden environmental hazards. Temporary setbacks, such as equipment failure or unexpected predator attacks, required immediate improvisation. Yet, the humans adapted quickly. Injured personnel were stabilized on site. Equipment was repaired or replaced using spare parts and ingenuity, and tactical decisions were revised in seconds. The resolution was not a single moment of triumph. It was a series of carefully orchestrated, high-stakes successes that gradually turned the tide. The aliens themselves began to play a more active role in their own survival. Under the guidance of the humans, they learned to use emergency shelters, operate basic stabilizers, and avoid immediate threats. Though fragile compared to humans, their adaptability grew rapidly when they observed the Deathworlders in action. Humans provided instruction in simple, clear ways, allowing aliens to participate in their rescue and recovery without overwhelming them. By empowering the aliens, the humans ensured that the solution was not entirely dependent on external help, an essential step in ensuring long-term survival. In addition to immediate rescue operations, that humans focused on environmental stabilization. Some areas of the planet were at risk of secondary disasters, collapsing infrastructure, ongoing chemical reactions in the soil, and unstable atmospheric pockets. Human engineers deployed devices to neutralize these threats. Portable shields and generators created safe zones, while automated drones monitored dangerous areas and provided real-time updates. By combining technology with human decision, the Deathworlders managed to transform zones of imminent death into temporary sanctuaries, allowing both themselves and the aliens to operate more safely. Another key part of the resolution involved predator management. Many of the planet's creatures had become aggressive due to environmental collapse, and they posed a continuous threat to both humans and alien survivors. Human teams used non-lethal deterrents to redirect predators away from populated zones, while simultaneously defending against attacks when necessary. Energy nets, sonic barriers, and other improvised tools allowed the humans to protect large numbers of aliens without unnecessary killing. The humans' understanding of survival dynamics, honed over generations, gave them an edge that no other species could match. They did not merely survive, they controlled the threats in ways that seemed impossible given the environment's hostility. Coordination between the fleet in orbit and the teams on the ground was essential. Communication lines were maintained despite intermittent interference from storms and magnetic fields. Ships provided aerial support, monitored predator movements, and delivered supplies to ground teams. Human pilots executed precise maneuvers, landing in areas previously considered inaccessible, and using advanced technology to transport fragile aliens through hazardous terrain. The combination of airborne and ground operations exemplified the Deathworlders' ability to integrate strategy, technology, and adaptability under extreme conditions. By the midpoint of the resolution phase, the bulk of the alien population had been moved to safer areas. Environmental hazards had been partially stabilized, and predator threats were largely contained. The immediate crisis had been averted, but the humans knew that long-term survival would require continued intervention. Therefore, they established emergency systems, portable shelters, power generators, and stabilizers that could operate autonomously or be controlled remotely. These systems were designed to give the aliens time to rebuild, adapt, and regain some independence in a world still full of threats. One of the most profound moments of the resolution came when the humans and aliens worked together to repair critical infrastructure. Bridges, collapsed roads, and partial shelters were reinforced, not just for immediate survival but to facilitate further evacuations and resource distribution. Aliens were taught basic repair techniques, guided by human expertise. This collaboration fostered trust and mutual respect, highlighting the humans' willingness to share knowledge while maintaining the authority and control necessary for survival in an extreme environment. Throughout this phase, the Deathworlders' resilience and resourcefulness were repeatedly tested. They faced sudden storms, unanticipated predator attacks, and unstable terrain, yet each time they adapted. Injuries were treated on site, damaged equipment was fixed, and evacuation plans were revised dynamically. The humans' combination of physical endurance, mental toughness, and strategic thinking ensured that no obstacle remained insurmountable for long. The resolution phase was, in essence, a demonstration of human mastery over chaos, not merely surviving in a deadly world, but actively reshaping it to preserve life. The alien civilization had been stabilized sufficiently to allow for recovery. Thousands of survivors were accounted for. Temporary shelters provided protection from environmental threats, and essential systems were operational to maintain life. The humans had not only completed their immediate mission but had laid the groundwork for the aliens' long-term survival. The critical moment had passed, but the impact of human intervention would be felt for generations emotionally. The resolution phase left a lasting impression on both humans and aliens. For the humans, it was a testament to their training, courage, and ability to act decisively in the face of overwhelming danger. For the aliens, it was transformative. They had witnessed a species capable of thriving in conditions that would destroy almost anyone else. They had seen humans act not just with strength, but with ingenuity, strategy, and adaptability. Their perception of humans shifted from curiosity or fear to awe and gratitude, recognizing that their survival was now intimately linked to the presence and actions of the Death. While technology played a vital role, it was the humans' ability to think creatively, adapt rapidly, and coordinate under pressure that ensured success. Drones, energy shields, stabilizers, and transport devices were all tools, but they required human decision-making to function effectively. The Deathworlders did not rely on raw power alone. They combined intellect, experience, and resilience to solve problems that no pre-existing protocol could have anticipated. As the fleet prepared to leave, the humans ensured that emergency systems remained in place to support ongoing survival. Portable power units, communication devices, and environmental stabilizers were left behind, providing the aliens with the tools needed to continue adapting to their changing world. While the humans' presence was temporary, their influence would endure. They had transformed a world on the brink of collapse into one where hope, structure, and potential recovery were possible. The humans had demonstrated that adaptability, courage, and intelligence could overcome even the most hostile conditions. They had rescued the aliens, mitigated environmental threats, and stabilized critical zones, proving once again why they were called Death. The alien world, once teetering on the edge of extinction, now had a chance to recover, thanks to the decisive actions, strategic planning, and indomitable spirit of the humans who had answered the SOS. The mission, once fraught with seemingly insurmountable challenges, had succeeded. Humans and aliens alike had endured, adapted, and overcome. The resolution was a testament to human ingenuity and resilience, showcasing the extraordinary lengths to which a species could go to save not only itself, but others in a universe indifferent to life. The stage was now set for the aftermath and reflection, where both humans and aliens would come to understand the full impact of their actions and the new possibilities that lay ahead. The mission was complete, the chaos had subsided, and the human Deathworlders fleet began its withdrawal from the alien world, leaving behind a civilization that had been transformed by their intervention. But the story did not end with the successful rescue of the alien survivors or the stabilization of the planet's environment. The aftermath was a complex mixture of relief, reflection, and the quiet understanding of the broader consequences of what had just occurred. For the humans, the mission had reaffirmed their abilities, tested their limits, and reminded them why they were called Death. For the aliens, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with both hope and the need for adaptation in a world that was still dangerous but now survivable. As the fleet ascended from the planet's surface, the first thing the humans noticed was a change in the atmosphere. It was subtle but undeniable. The toxic clouds, once thick and oppressive, had begun to disperse in areas where stabilization devices had been deployed. The once lethal gas pockets were now contained or neutralized, allowing faint sunlight to penetrate and illuminate the terrain. Drones hovered over critical zones, monitoring shifts in the landscape and warning of any immediate threats. Even the most precarious structures were now reinforced enough to prevent sudden collapse. The humans had not only rescued the aliens, they had left behind systems that actively preserved life. The aliens, still shaken from the disasters they had endured, began to understand the scope of what had just happened. Entire families, once trapped in collapsing buildings or scattered across dangerous terrain, had survived. Communities that were on the brink of annihilation were now stabilized in temporary shelters. Guided by both technology and the human strategic planning, there was a collective awe among them, a recognition that the humans who had arrived were unlike any other species they had encountered. They were not merely visitors. They were protectors, problem solvers, and survivors capable of enduring conditions that seemed impossible. The aliens' perception of the humans had shifted from fear or suspicion to respect and gratitude. Within the fleet, there was a quiet reflection among the crew. They had faced storms, collapsing cities, predatory creatures, and environmental hazards that tested their training to the absolute limit. Every crew member had performed under extreme pressure, improvising solutions, coordinating rescues, and ensuring survival in a world that had seemingly rejected life itself. Some had sustained injuries, some had faced near-death encounters, and all had been pushed to their mental and physical limits. Yet there was a profound sense of accomplishment. The humans had not only survived but had accomplished what no other species could have. They had stabilized a civilization in a Deathworld scenario and left systems in place for continued survival. Commanders held debriefing sessions aboard the lead ships, reviewing the actions, decisions, and outcomes of the mission. Every choice was analyzed not for criticism, but to understand the effectiveness of strategies under extreme conditions. The fleet's successes were impressive. The navigation through the nebula, the coordination of ground and orbital teams, the improvised technological solutions, and the ability to protect both humans and aliens simultaneously. Each lesson learned was catalogued to inform future missions in similarly hostile environments. The debrief was more than routine. It was an acknowledgement of human ingenuity, resilience, and the extraordinary capacity for adaptation. Emotionally, the humans experienced a mix of relief and contemplation. The adrenaline of danger faded, replaced by the awareness of what had been accomplished. They had intervened in a world on the brink of collapse and changed its trajectory. Their actions had saved lives, not just in the immediate sense, but in a way that allowed for long-term recovery and stability. The weight of responsibility carried throughout the mission was now balanced with the satisfaction of success. They had faced the ultimate test of their skills and endurance, and they had emerged victorious, leaving behind proof of their capabilities in both technology and human willpower. The aliens, for their part, began to rebuild under the guidance of the humans' temporary systems. Even the youngest and weakest members of their civilization could move safely through zones that were once lethal. They learned to operate the stabilization devices, maintain emergency shelters, and recognize early warning signs of environmental hazards. Over time, these systems would enable them to regain independence while still adapting to the harsh conditions of their planet. The Deathworlders had not simply performed a rescue, they had imparted knowledge, strategies, and tools that allowed the aliens to survive without continuous external intervention. This balance of aid and empowerment was crucial. The aftermath also included a profound shift in the relationship between the humans and the aliens, where once there had been isolation, suspicion, and fear, there was now mutual recognition and respect. The aliens understood the humans' unique capacity to thrive under extreme conditions, and the humans had seen firsthand the fragility and resilience of the alien species. Trust had been established in the most extreme of circumstances, and it was likely to endure. This bond, forged in danger and survival, was a testament to the ability of humans to not only survive, but to facilitate the survival of others in even the harshest environments. The mission left an enduring impression on human society as well. Reports of the Deathworlders' success spread through colonies, stations, and command centers. Humans were reminded of their unique place in the galaxy, a species capable of enduring and thriving where others could not, a civilization defined by adaptability, courage, and relentless determination. The story of the SOS response became an example of the Deathworlders' ethos in action, a combination of physical resilience, mental toughness, and moral responsibility in extreme conditions. It was a narrative that inspired confidence, respect, and even awe, both within human space and beyond technologically. The mission also provided invaluable data. The humans had collected information on environmental hazards, predator behavior, and alien infrastructure under extreme stress. Their solutions, while improvised in many cases, demonstrated principles of adaptability that could be applied to other missions. The stabilization devices, drones, and emergency systems were analyzed for efficiency, effectiveness, and potential improvements. Each technological success and failure became part of the accumulated wisdom of the Deathworlders, ensuring that future interventions would be even more effective psychologically. The mission reinforced the humans' confidence in their abilities. They had faced unpredictable chaos, navigated environments lethal to almost any species, and successfully managed a multifaceted crisis. Their ability to act decisively, adapt in real time, and protect lives under extreme conditions had been validated. For the crew, this experience strengthened the sense of identity that defined the Deathworlders, a species not simply capable of survival, but of thriving under circumstances that would destroy anyone else. For the alien survivors, the aftermath was a period of adjustment and learning. Their world remained dangerous, but with the systems left by the humans, they now had the means to stabilize key areas and protect their communities. The trauma of recent events was still present, but it was tempered by the knowledge that help had arrived and that their survival was now possible. The humans' presence, though temporary, had changed the trajectory of their civilization. They had been given not just rescue but guidance, tools, and hope, and opportunity to rebuild in ways they had not imagined possible. The mission also prompted reflection on the nature of interspecies aid. The humans had intervened in a world they barely understood, facing risks that could have destroyed their fleet. Their success demonstrated the value of courage, adaptability, and decisive action in extreme conditions. It was a lesson for both humans and the wider galaxy. Survival often depended on more than raw power. It required ingenuity, empathy, and the willingness to act when others would hesitate. This reflection underscored the humans' unique place in the cosmos as death species able to answer the calls that no one else dared to acknowledge. That as the fleet moved back toward safer space, the human crew continued to monitor the planet from orbit. Sensors tracked environmental stability, predator activity, and the functioning of emergency systems. The humans ensured that the aliens had the tools to maintain their safety, while remaining ready to intervene if the situation deteriorated. Even in retreat, the Deathworlders remained vigilant, aware that survival required constant observation, preparation, and the ability to respond instantly to new threats. The aftermath was both tangible and symbolic. Tangible in the sense that lives had been saved, environmental systems stabilized, and the alien civilization given a chance to recover. Symbolic in the sense that the mission had proven the extraordinary capabilities of humans as death, reinforcing their reputation and demonstrating the profound impact a single species could have when guided by courage, skill, and a will to survive. The SOS had not only been answered, it had been transformed into a story of triumph against nearly impossible odds. The reflection phase was a time for both humans and aliens to internalize the lessons of survival, courage, and adaptation. Humans had tested their limits and succeeded. Aliens had learned to trust, adapt, and participate in their own rescue. The world remained dangerous, but hope now existed alongside hazard. The mission would be remembered as an example of what determination, ingenuity, and collaboration could achieve in the face of overwhelming adversity. The impact of the Deathworlders' actions extended beyond the immediate mission. It would influence the way humans approached future crises, how alien civilizations perceived human intervention, and how survival in extreme environments was understood across the galaxy. It was a legacy built not on dominance, but on capability, courage, and the unwavering commitment to survival in the harshest conditions imaginable. The SOS had been a test, and humans had proven that they could not only survive Deathworlds, they could transform them, save lives, and leave lasting systems that ensured continued survival long after they departed. The aftermath was quiet but profound. For the humans, it was a reminder of their unique resilience and the responsibilities that came with it. For the aliens, it was a rebirth, a chance to survive, rebuild, and grow under the guidance and example of a species that had mastered the art of survival in the most extreme conditions. The mission was complete, but its effects would ripple through time and space, a testament to the extraordinary possibilities of courage, ingenuity, and interspecies cooperation in the galaxy's harshest corners.